Hello, Compassion Ambassadors. Thank you so much for taking a moment to tune in to yourself as well as into such an important topic about how we radically, truly heal. I feel incredibly grateful to be here with Jennifer Boyd. She's a physician's assistant as well as a patient who has found her own radical path to healing from what we're calling Lyme disease, which is quite a complex um, disease state, and she's helping so many people. And one of the things that I love about you, Jennifer, is what an investigator you are, because I think that we're soul sisters in that. Like, we want answers, we want solutions. And
Mm-hmm.
so all of my friends here, the Compassion Ambassadors and the Network of Love, know that I have been deeply humbled by yet another massive neuroinflammatory episode. And it's just got me every day that I get a little better, wanting solutions, wanting answers. So that's why I've invited you to talk with me today. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with this disease state and then give us some foundational understanding? We all just need to simplify our understanding of this disease, what it is, where it came from, why it's costing so much and taking so long for people to heal.
Is that all? That's easy.
No, no biggie.
So first, interrupt me if I am off target. My goal is, I know as a patient, I was always so hungry for the answers and felt frustrated that people weren't getting right to it. So there's no ego for me. Just let me know, hey, go back to this piece or let's move on. Two, I just wanted to say shout out for my profession. It's physician assistant, and the plural is physician assistants, not physician's assistant. Totally unimportant, but thank you for honoring that. And a shout out to you for all that you're doing for your own recovery, but also this beautiful offering that you have for helping everybody else. I think that is the path out of this for us, is that we need to come together and do more of this open source information sharing, as we're about to talk about Lyme disease, which we're air quoting because nobody really knows what we're talking about when we talk about this constellation of symptoms that we agreed to call Lyme disease. It's incredibly expensive, no matter how you decide to treat it. If you do a conventional route, alternative, the costs are really high, financially, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So my journey started, like most Lyme people, I now think my journey started long before I realized my journey started. I got diagnosed with Lyme disease in 2009. At that point, I realized, oh, I should go back and look at those Lyme tests that they had told me were negative 2 years ago. And when I did that, I realized, wow, actually, I had a positive Lyme test in 2007, but that was misrepresented to me, because my bad. I should have gotten my own lab tests and confirmed it myself, which I tell all of my patients and didn't do. Looking back, I now realize, as a sophisticated Lyme literate practitioner, that I've probably had Lyme since birth, that I may have had transmission from my mother, feto-maternal transmission, pardon me. So hard to know exactly when my journey began. I will tell you the abridged version because I think it's really helpful for us when we hear the horror of horrors that people have gone through, and then we see them upright and living to fight another day, which I think that's what I hear from my patients. That's one of the things they actually love about me, is that I am fully functioning and I seem neurotypical on my good days, right? And that I am back in the living. And for a very long time, that was a major question mark for me. So when I look back historically, I started out with major neurological inflammation as an infant, and they told my parents that I'd likely die. And I was about 18 months old when that happened. That's 1971, pre-CT scans, the whole bit. That's right ground zero for Lyme disease emerging as what we know it to be today. And I lived on Long Island, which was also ground zero, literally geographically, for Lyme disease. I went on and recovered through incredible good fortune, super high dose steroids, which probably really did a long-term number on me. And really by virtue of incredible luck that they didn't crack my brain open and do exploratory surgery as they had hoped to do. So a lot of things intervened to just get me to like keep pushing the ball further down the field until I finally got everything to kind of quiet down neurologically enough that I was able to recover milestones and get back into the swing of things. And then my kidneys and bladder, kind of a typical Lyme story here if you pay attention, didn't know it at the time, but kidney bladder issues, wound up having surgery there when I was about 6 years old, chronic infections. They did a right ureter reimplantation, trying to save my kidneys from reflux. Moving onwards, I wound up with bilateral knee issues by high school. Nobody could figure out what was going on with all the knee pain and the connective tissue issues. Very common around as well. I wound up with different surgeries on
I'm
both
sorry.
knees.
Hold on one second. I actually
Yeah.
have to stop this because my housemates have locked themselves out.
Oh, no worries.
I was trying to not have to stop this, but that's why I was like, oh crap, why am I? And you're probably wondering why I was looking down. I'm so sorry. Hold on.
No worries.
We're going to have to shoot. Darn it. Okay, we're back. Hey, real life happens. We'll just keep rolling, you know?
Cool.
That's one of the things Lyme teaches you. You just, you know what?
Exactly.
No matter what, you just keep going.
Yeah, it's good enough.
It's good enough. Good enough is good enough.
Absolutely.
No, I'm really touched by what you're saying because so things unwound for me in a really similar way, a little bit differently with the neuroinflammation, but I had unexplained what they were calling interstitial cystitis.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, for years I walked around with those Cystex pills. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I just had to have them all the time. In college, I
Yeah.
was told I had pelvic inflammatory disease, like, you know, multiple times, and they just couldn't explain it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the knee thing has come up so many different times. So I love how you're just pointing out that there's these things that are signs that we have become numb to. And we'll talk
Mm-hmm.
about this a little bit more towards the end, but like there's a few invisible monster heads all compiled into one. And one of them is the face of the disease. And I think the other side of that monster's head is invalidation.
Mm-hmm.
Validation of
Right.
ourselves, invalidation of each other, the invalidation we're getting from the medical profession, that, you know, the medical professionals who don't know how to recognize what's going on. So just planting that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well said. It is a many-headed Hydra. And there is a major medicalization, particularly of women, issue that runs through a lot of these stories. Misdiagnosis, which I understand as a practitioner, I understand how easy it is to misdiagnose this given our training and the way we are medicalized, and that when treatments don't work, and they should, so if they don't, then something's wrong with the person, not the diagnosis or the treatments. Because if the converse is true, if there's something wrong with our diagnosis or our treatment, that leaves us in the not knowing, which is completely unacceptable for this patriarchal, hierarchical system that we've created. It's a real threat to the entire foundations of how we do medicine in the West. So I appreciate what we're up against with all of our, attempts at understanding these signs and symptoms. And the utility in going through a story like that is when I look backwards, I realize the evidence was there all along. This was whatever Lyme is, that I just had sequential, ongoing, chronic, complex illnesses. And so when people say, oh, are you cured? What's the treatment? Oh, I took one course of antibiotics and I'm totally fine. I like to expand the lens. I hope that is true. I never want to take that away from anybody. I think feeling cured is incredibly important, but I also want to educate people to understand that you're talking about something that can cause incredible infirmity over a very long period of time. And like a whack-a-mole, it can come up in a multitude of ways over time. So if you're not really critically looking at it, you don't realize that your ulcerative colitis, your Crohn's disease, your chronic fatigue, your cystitis, your interstitial cystitis, that all of those things, Parkinson's, those can all be part of the many heads of that Hydra. It's important to know that, because if you miss that, just like it was missed with me, you're not getting the treatment. And it's actually going deeper and deeper into the tissue level, and it can be a lot more difficult to really get at and permanently eradicate.
Well, that's what
And
happened.
that really comes from, right,
That's
right.
what
It happens
happened.
with so much of us.
And the point, and I was one of those people that was like, I'm invincible. I figured out I'm in control. I figured this whole game out, because I had, the first 3 years of infection were bad. I was told I had meningitis and encephalitis. Then I was bedridden for nearly 3 years and told I would be on pain meds, antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds. And they even wanted to start giving me low dose chemo and told me I'd live on it for the rest of my life. And I was like, people are crazy. So I climbed my way out of that, and I created what I call a bodacious life in spite of
Mm,
the thing that was going on. I created what I realize now was a compensation. It was a very
mhm,
expensive compensation to the tune of
mm,
$1,500 to $3,000 a month ongoing for almost a 20-year period. I was, that just became, look, I just wanted to function and have a bodacious life. So I just felt like I was like a biohacking expert before any Dave Asprey was even a thought in anyone's mind. I just wanted to figure out a way to function. And I thought that I was winning because I did. This
right.
is what I've learned. From where I'm sitting now, I can see, I know you can never regret anything because it's all just been part of the learning. Now I'm humbled. And now I realize
Mm,
all that money and all that invincibility that I was paying for and thought that I had was really just giving this thing a chance to cross the blood-brain barrier and infect my cerebral spinal fluid and set up camp in my brainstem. And, that's why I want to educate people now.
mm,
Ice baths,
yeah.
acupuncture, and meditation, and positive thought, and NLPing, and Reiki, and all of it's amazing. It's all part of what I call the mandala of radiant health. However, it does not replace treating this nefarious, complex cluster of bacteriums and viruses and funguses you can run. But what I'm learning in a very intimate and very humble way, you cannot hide. Have you had that experience?
Absolutely. And I think you named some great pieces of that mandala that are still, as you said, really important to everybody. But I think what's different is each person will have a contribution from that constellation that's different. And it's very hard to predict that or know that, which is why these kind of monotherapies or, here's the one cure for everybody just doesn't work, which is unfortunate. You need to do a lot of digging into your own experience. How is this presenting? Listen to your own story and start testing your theory about what needs attention first. Because, of course, we're all training one another in the medical field to say, like, okay, this is the highest order infection or issue, and you need to go over that one first and keep healing in this order. And even that turns out to have some limitations. It's useful from sort of like an organizational perspective, just to kind of guide you some way in with a patient. But the truth is, it just doesn't, it's not repeatable. It doesn't work well enough that you can just blueprint this once and have everybody succeed, unfortunately.
Is that because there's different types of Lyme, different stages, phases, places infected?
Yeah, right. Good question. So here's the easy part of the conversation. Not at all. We don't know what we're dealing with. For a while, we could feel pretty confident saying it was Lyme disease, and then we realized, wow, that just doesn't even encapsulate what's happening for these people. These people, me.
Me.
So it is, yeah, us. It is multi-organismal, so we know that there's lots of evidence to suggest that there is a natural reservoir of Lyme disease, which is a Borrelia, a specific bacteria that is often transmitted by a tick bite. Everything I've just said in that sentence has a whole bunch of caveats already. That's how much our information has changed. That is one narrow piece of pie in this much larger story of Lyme disease. There are multiple other organisms that can be transmitted in the same way that we conventionally have understood Lyme disease to be transmitted, which is typically from a tick bite. That's, again, a tiny piece of the pie in how it's actually transmitted. And then there's the natural reservoir of that we were just kind of naming, but there is also an abundance of evidence to suggest that there was a US bioweapons program going on starting World War II, where even the person who founded the organism that purportedly causes Lyme disease, Borrelia burgdorferi, the scientist named Willy Burgdorfer, out in Montana, actually was engaged in the US bioweapons program. That part is irrefutable. Willy Burgdorfer admits to it himself, and he has since passed away. But to what degree we can know and understand that Lyme disease was actually bioweaponized, that's when it gets a little bit more gray. So I want to be careful about what I say. My personal belief is it's incredibly clear. He is quoted as saying that they were looking for an infectious agent that could cause the greatest amount of infirmity and be the least detectable. So they were combining things that didn't normally go together. They were trying to complicate, obfuscate, and make as many people as possible. And they succeeded. I think that's what we're seeing right now, is that we don't really know. We just know that we don't. So we are absolutely, to answer your question a little more directly, we are dealing with multiple organisms. I named one bacteria. There are a multitude of other bacteria. It's almost not worth your time to list them all. And I know you could rattle them off yourself, but we're also dealing with a bunch of viruses. And interestingly, whether or not you believe, as if this is a church, whether or not you believe about the bioweapons aspect of it, we have seen evidence that these weird exotic viruses are starting to show up in our Lyme patients, like Powassan, for example, and all these encephalitis-linked viruses that, like, how else are they getting communicated to us? Like, what is the natural reservoir for those things in these vector populations? It seems like no one's really interested in asking those questions from that perspective. Why are they these ticks in numbers that they didn't used to be before? So clearly something's happened, and we are at the end of the receptacles of receiving these infections, be it from tick bites, be it from spider bites, from 10% of other biting insects. If we are spreading it one to another, not understanding the full modes of transmission, which is possible and in many cases has been proven. I mentioned in my story that there was very likely a feto-maternal transfer for my Lyme disease. There is some question because we're dealing with, in the case of the Lyme bacteria and the Borrelia burgdorferi, we're dealing with a spirochete, which is a family that is related to syphilis, which we know to be pretty easily communicated and certainly sexually. So I don't want to like overwhelm you with details, but we've almost gotten to the point when I go to these Lyme studies, we're like, why are we bothering talking about what we think we know to be true about Lyme disease, that it's Borrelia burgdorferi, and now some people also have Bartonella, or they might have a parasite like Babesia or Ehrlichia. It doesn't matter, because guess what? The antibiotics that we think go with those things, that we're trained to say, oh, this kind of antibiotic this kind of infection responds really well to this kind of antibiotic when you're talking about bacteria, that ain't working. That's just not the case. Or when you're talking about a syphilitic looking organism, it should respond to penicillin. And we've had some success with penicillin, but that hasn't been the end all be all for everybody. So what gives? What are we missing? That's raising more questions that no one seems to be answering. We just keep switching, like, okay, it's not that, let's go to doxycycline. Well, doxycycline really is great for more like the Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Why is that working so well against the Borrelia burgdorferi? I don't think we care anymore. And I think we're missing some important breadcrumbs that we should be picking up and investigating. Like you said in the beginning, you and I are like sitting around pondering these things. Why? And asking people, like, what do you know? We need to talk to more researchers. And that does happen. I don't mean to disparage our whole field. We are having those conversations, but clearly we're missing more than we are picking up.
Mhm. Well, and the piece that is, I feel, because I've spent the last year sort of putting myself out there really radically on social media, because I just like, what is happening? Like, we need to
Mm,
start getting super real and sharing what's real.
mhm,
I need to find out what other people are experiencing. And it's been heartbreaking, how massive the community of people who are having what some are calling like a Lyme refugee sort of experience, and I'm one of them,
mm,
where we
mhm,
spent hundreds of thousands of dollars over all of these years, thinking that we were somehow managing mysterious illness, only to find out that mysterious illness has a place and a name, and that it's even more expensive now that it wasn't treated sooner. And it
mhm,
just comes to a point of like, so many of us are just raising money, asking friends for help, asking doctors for favors. I'm just trying to figure out how to pay my colonic bill, because if I don't get a colonic, I have an episode. So I'm at a like $1,200 a month colonic bill. I'm like, wait, I didn't like put one of these in my house, except for I don't have a house. I'm staying with friends.
mhm,
And the whole thing is
mhm,
like becoming this massive social issue. And I think so there's two things I wanted to point out there is like, you and we want solutions. And what I've learned from, that time being with everyone on social media was like, wow, we don't have, like you said, like an open source place that has the information that we need, that has a community we need. And that's what really made me want to start creating the network of love,
mm,
that will organically grow, because I just don't have the energy to make it into a business. But it's like, look, it can pass through word of mouth that we're sharing information here. The other thing is that the piece that gets really confusing when we're asking friends and family for help is like, why is the treatment going on so long? And part of that is that there's a sort of like this cascade of damage that's caused by long-term untreated infection. And that
right.
comes, so you're not just dealing with what you just mentioned, which was these are persistent bacteria. The antibiotics are not working. We're just trying to chase the disease around this whack-a-mole sort of thing in the body. It looks like it's this, then it's that. That's like a whole process and time consuming and expensive to begin with. Then there's the other part, which is
Mm,
all of the damage that's being left in the trail. Once the gut is destroyed and starts leaking, once it's in the cerebral spinal fluid and the damage to the brain. I've got traumatic brain injury. Every time I have an episode, I have cognitive impairment.
mm,
My spinal cord gets super weak. I can barely walk to the kitchen. Like these are real neurological concerns that require a massive amount of rehabilitation. So what do you have to say
mhm.
about like that side of the, what are you calling it? The multi-headed,
Many-headed Hydra.
yeah, the
Yeah.
many-headed Hydra.
Yeah, that's that, when I was showing you that little pie piece, that pie is huge and we keep naming little tiny slivers. And that's the problem with trying to understand the totality of this experience, is that this entire pie is composed of never-ending tiny slices. This conversation could be hours long, trying to say like, oh, we've covered it all, because you named a really important piece. Is like, that's the infections we know. That's like a tenth, not even. That's like a 16th of a piece of that pie. The rest is made up of all the stuff we just don't know, and all the ways those pieces are interacting in this complex web of us, right? So always in the back of my mind, I'm dealing with the piece of there are things we can never know about this if it was bioweaponized, right? There are probably, there's an element of this story, I'm sure you picked up on this, where at one point the Canadians in their bioweapons program were working on irradiation of organisms. And I haven't followed that thread far enough to understand what was their goal, right? Other than mutagenesis and more evasion of diagnostics, like were they just hoping to cause viral mutation, create something completely new or something just so damaging? But we know Willie was working with the Canadians around their irradiation, and that there's some suspicion that this bioweaponized infection was irradiated. And so that's a real game changer in my mind. It sort of haunts, like, how much can we fully predict how this will behave and what it's supposed to do long term? What I do like to tell patients, and I want to make sure I pause and say this for both of us to hear right now, as well as your viewers, is that here's the great news. We have a wonderful military. They are incredibly capable and very well funded. And if their primary goal was to kill us outright, would be long dead. They, in fact, were trying to just cause a greater level of morbidity. And in some ways that's comforting, and should be, because it's terrifying when you're this sick. I know I've had many moments where I remember saying to people, I know I'm dying. It's not that I think I might. I felt like I was dying in the throes of this. And I'd stop my story. Like, it went on for years of this symptom, that symptom, until I wound up bedridden and unable to think, unable to drive, sudden onset agoraphobia and panic attacks, right? Crazy things. And then you wind up where most of my patients wind up, which is, I'm definitely going to die. And so I like to remind us all that you're not likely to die from this, because it's terrifying, alienating, isolating feeling, and you can't get anybody to validate your experience. Excuse me. Recovering from the flu. The good news is you can get the flu and still live through it. So that is like the most reassuring thing that we can say to one another is, you are thriving. Even when you feel terrible, you're actually surviving and thriving, and you will continue to, and that you have enough reservoir left to recover fully. It's just a question of, what does that recovery actually mean? What does it look like? I think we're really off the map in terms of what Western medicine understands and knows to be possible. And so every day we're working together to create what it means to recover from this infection, what it means to have an immune system that can get over the imprint, the trauma of this. That's the piece you were naming before. That's a big piece of this pie, is like the cascade of things that gets set in motion that we just don't know the effects of, and what's from the primary infection or insult, and what's all the sequelae from like cytokine storm. What's chronic long-term Lyme anyway. So we're creating that, we're at the edge of the world's known map, and we are pouring and putting down flags in places and saying, here's our new language around this, here's our new expectations, here's what worked for me and why I think it worked, and let's see if we could save each other some time and resources, because it's crazy expensive. I can't even calculate how much money I have spent over the years, all of it good. I don't regret any of it, but would I love to save my patients, my friends and family from the same fate? Yeah. And I think of all the people who can't even afford to get on a computer and watch us dissect this topic. This is not even in the realm of the for many people to even start participating in solving this in a real way. And that concerns me greatly. I think that's our responsibility to one another, is cast a wider net and catch us.
Thank you for that. And that's, as I started to learn how big this was, because I was in my own little shame cocoon. I was ashamed about my mysterious illness.
Mm,
I just wanted so badly to be healthy and strong and function and be able to take care of myself. And I created a way to do that. Um, what I didn't realize was that I was part of this larger, massive community of people who have, in their own little separate experiences, been going through something very similar. And, once I realized that, I knew the only thing I can do is dedicate my experience to the benefit of all beings. The only
mm,
thing that can happen now is that I know that everything I've experienced for the last 20 years, everything I'm experiencing in my recovery is in service to the solution for the many. And I can't personally take a bunch of phone calls or go out and help everyone I'm coming across or even answer all the social media messages. But what I could do is start interviewing people like yourself who are coming to me through my network of love. We were introduced through Kenlin, Soul Sister.
mhm,
So this is a Soul Sister magic connection that is just a gift. So,
mhm,
um, that's the intention behind why we're creating this, and I'm really dedicated to creating solutions. I love what you said. We're basically off the old map, and in creating solutions, we're really looking at, first of all, we know the body's a miracle and we know that we can recover. That's the baseline. Then the next step is, what's the how, which is going to be a little bit unique for everyone. The one piece that seems like we all need is that we need essentially what I'm calling lighthouses. I see that my vision is that the Network of Love will become funded to be able to start a project called the Lighthouse Project, where we can start creating lighthouses that are set up and optimized for the recovery from these infections. There's a very unique type of recovery that's needed, and cocooning needed, because of the way this attacks the brain and the nervous system. I fully believe that the nervous system and the brain can be regenerated. I'm doing it. I'm watching my brain come back to life. So what I believe is that we essentially, these are like new hospitals. These are like the hospitals for the soul, where we reclaim our bodies as homes for the light that we are. And I also see these as, not treatment centers, but as like community style homes, where those of us who are really committed to the radical healing and to the radiant path of radiant health, similar to you, where we make a choice, we're doing this, now we just need to be set up in the right environment that helps us optimize and sort of efficiently move through the process of the rehabilitation. So that's my dream. I know that you are already living that in a way. Can you tell us a little bit about your work and what you're offering? You're in.
Yeah, sure. I love that vision. I think you're spot on. Hospital for the Soul is like, that's a must. You also named another really important piece that all Lymies have in common, which is shame. There is usually a core wound around that piece where, call it what you will, but there is a relationship in each of us to shame around our illness, shame from other sources that's getting stirred up. So that Hospital for the Soul piece is an important connection to resourcing people to really get healing at that level. And work on those emotions, because I did train with Dietrich Klinghardt. I'm sure you know him. I loved his work, and he always talked about the 5 levels of healing, and that the physical level was the last level on which you would see manifest issues taking hold that had started out at the spiritual level, and that over years of inattention or inappropriate connection to those issues, they kind of burrow and get deeper and deeper and wind up on the physical level. That's the hardest level to treat. So a good therapy, and that's what I try to do with my patients here, a good therapeutic intervention will have solutions on all of those levels, so that you can just sort of magically create a vacuum where it's pulled out of the physical level and gets sustained healing all the way through the etheric, emotional, all those levels out to spiritual. and then poof, you have somebody who is intact again.
Mm.
So that's what I do one-on-one with my patients here. I take a very small set of carefully selected patients who are 10 out of 10 for commitment, nothing shy of that, because the work that we do is really intense. And we work for 6, 9, 12 months or longer on addressing, like, where are all the holes in this dam, plugging those all up, and then bailing, just going through every layer and saying, like, okay, where can we buy you bandwidth so that you can start doing the magic that's you? Because it's pretty much so all you have to do is help people bail, get in the trenches with them, and recover enough space that the intactness of them that is already their birthright that exists within them can come back online and can start doing real heavy lifting. And that's tough when you are almost out of resources. And that's generally who I work with, is people who are just, nothing else has worked, and they've tried every antibiotic and this and that, and they've got like so little bandwidth left. And we're just like, shoehorning in there and prying that open and, restoring some vitality to the system. And how does that, I'm not being evasive, how does that look? What is it? It runs the gamut, but it has, modalities on every single level. And so it's going to involve some degree of homeopathy, somatic therapy, movement therapy that's somatic related, intuitive medical diagnosis from me. I also have a lot of certifications in that area. And then all of the biochemistry, all of it may involve antibiotics. That's not it doesn't resonate well with me. So I tell people, if that's like, it has to be antibiotics, you probably don't want me. That would be the last place I would go. But it's going to be just about everything else, tons of botanicals, and just lots of connection for the experience that you're having, and helping you, as I said, just recreate the container that can hold this experience such that you are reestablishing bandwidth to really bring yourself back online. And you mentioned earlier,
Exactly.
I do a lot of videos. Yeah.
That's
I do videos to help people. Like, we might not be able to work together, and I feel like you do. I am on the phone all the time talking to whomever will speak to me. And I'm speaking to you. If you're out there and you know a piece of this puzzle, this story that I should hear, please reach out to me, boydwellness@gmail.com. I spend my free hours and weekends talking to researchers and interviewing key players in this field, trying to put this story together and look at it through that other perspective I mentioned before. And it has been incredibly revealing and really fruitful. And I hope to share more and more of those results with you. So please keep that conversation going. That's the first invitation. And two, we might not be able to work together because, like every other Lyme literate practitioner in the world, I can't accept insurance. I do lots of modalities that I don't even like to name on a recorded program, just because it's well tolerated by the medical establishment. And so we can't accept insurance. It's cash-based only, and it's not inexpensive. And I feel that feels wrong. I know we need to get this out to more and more people. So I am working on the open source piece, and I have started creating a bunch of videos that are incredibly expensive to produce. But I'm figuring it out, working it out. And I have some wonderful partners who are donating their time and resources to me. And so I've been pushing some of that video content out for free. And I'm sure we can provide them with a link at my website, boydwellness.com/allaboutlyme, I think it is. And so I just keep adding videos to just get you a more comprehensive look at the information, just a level down from what we discussed today about, like, what is the infection? What do we think about it? And just walk you through little mini modules to help you get to this, like, okay, I can hold all the complexity of this story, and I know where to jump in for my own healing. That's an important piece. If you don't get the story, you don't understand what you're really up against, it's unlikely that you're going to have the right set of modalities for this. You'll probably wind up walking away from a practitioner who's going to give you one thing. If you get a practitioner who gives you one thing and you're chronically ill, I guarantee you that's not going to do it. I'm not saying take 20 things at once. I'm saying if the solution is one thing, I have yet to see that work. That means you need to expand. So that's my hope, is just to convince people that this is complex, but it doesn't have to be overly complicated. There's a difference. We can trust in our body's ability to heal and make this easeful, joyful, simple, and as straightforward as possible. And I know that's where we're in alignment about, like, let's do this. Enough of this tomfoolery. I have stronger language for that coming to mind, but enough of this madness, and I can't tolerate anymore. So I'm ready to, like, let's make a difference. And so my pledge to you is, if I can help you and your people and raise money for you specifically by offering some phone consults, let's do that. Let's figure it out. If anybody else out there hears me and says, I need to work with that woman, I trust that there's divinity. If you hear me and you're like, I need to talk to her, I'll figure it out with you, find a way. So you can reach out to me and we will come up with something. I can usually tell, because of my intuition, what you will need. If you really need me, or if I can send you to somebody else, or if I can give you the next level of information, I am very happy to do that for you. So that's my invitation to everybody out there.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll put that in the notes, because I write a blog with every post out to the Patreon
Cool.
community. And the Network of Love is designed as a giving and receiving feedback loop. So by you not only giving your time and this incredible insight, this is phenomenally valuable. I mean, I can't even imagine what your fee is. It's probably at least $500 for this amount of time. So this is huge. And then having the opportunity to have access to you and the offerings you just gave, that's a huge gift to the network. So thank you. And it's just my hope and knowing that this will serve people who need it. And my intention is that those who need us will find us. Those who need us will find us. And that's what's happening with this, with our learning right now. A brand new medical system is being born. A new pathway into our radical radiant health is being born. And there are those of us who are on the path, who are forging the new path, who are finding the way, who are connecting heart to heart. It's us, and it's Beth. You've spoken with my doctor, Beth. I love everything that you've just been saying. Is like, okay, that's exactly how Beth operates. This is exactly the map. This is exactly what we're dealing with, and we're all in service, and we're all very humble. We're not claiming we know anything.
Nice.
We're like, whoa, okay,
no,
we are learning right
absolutely
now.
not.
This is big. And
student and teacher, same time.
exactly. I even said that last time I saw Beth. I was like, okay, I've been in the holy war. Now I'm like, woo, or I don't know what just happened, but I am just listening and learning and deeply humbled once again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay.
Just one last plug I would like to say is that I am so aware that people of color in this Lyme community are getting zero attention. And that's a serious problem. And because we have, even though we feel incredibly disempowered in our experience, we also have way more power than some other people. So I just wanted to name at least that one group so that we can start putting it in our mind map of how are we all going to get the word out to people who just simply can't afford these treatments, to people, communities that aren't being spoken to at all, that aren't being appropriately diagnosed. It's not on people's medical maps to diagnose people of color for some reason, as is true for many different diagnoses for people of color. As poorly as women are treated in the medical community, minorities are just 20 times more fragile in that system. So I don't know what to do with that at the moment, except for to hold that we can do a better job as we're creating this new model.
Yeah.
Because we have to.
Yeah, we have to. We absolutely have to. And so much of our mental health crisis in the world and in our nation, I believe is closely related to the Lyme, air quote, Lyme
Yeah.
crisis, which is closely then commingled with like just our healthcare crisis. So I think if we
Yeah.
all change the way that we are thinking about our health, and
Mm.
we can, each of us can make a commitment to change the way that we interact with people who present with mysterious illness, chronic illness.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we can each catch ourselves any and every time we go to judge or invalidate someone,
Mm.
I mean, that's just like massive right there, because invalidation and judgment and sort of like not paying attention because they're like, that person's always sick or whatever, or oh God, why is it taking so long, and then you just sort of turn your head. I mean, that's just like a rampant disease in itself, which then creates separation, and the separation is the problem. What we need is connection. I believe the foundation
Mm-hmm.
for healing is love, our relationship with love. And if you have anyone in your life that has a mysterious illness or seems to be chronically ill, the number one thing you can do is validate them. And I'm radical to the point where I'm like, I would immediately then get the person in touch with ILAD's website, where they can find a Lyme literate physician who is the Lyme literate physicians, whether or not that disease happens to be Lyme, they're up notch in terms of their medical detectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just want to help get that person to a medical detective who is not invalidating them, who is actually understanding that they're having a true experience, and helps to start unravel the complex issue. The more that we can validate each other and take inspired action to support each other, the better. And, the more that we can start to collaborate in our efforts to raise funds, if we have, they're saying potentially 400,000 new cases of Lyme per year, potentially up to 2 million people walking around on the planet with chronic Lyme, not aware of it. When all that starts breaking down and people start having massive neurological inflammatory episodes and they can't find any answers anywhere that doesn't cost, thousands upon thousands of dollars a month, then that's when we're really going to be in trouble. So we need to sort of shift how we're supporting each other in financially getting our needs met. And that's one of my goals with Network of Love and the Lighthouse Project, and galvanizing support from the people on the planet who do have the money to start creating the pathways to get us well, so that we can all generate from a place that is the truth of who we are, and we can bring our gifts to the world. And I really believe that's all based on essentially our relationship with love and our relationships with each other, how we help each other. That's the call.
Yeah.
That's the call
You're
of
spot on. Yeah, and I would add to the earth, right? I mean, this is the nexus of where environment and human health really start to collide. Like, you are seeing climate change when you look at Lyme disease.
Yeah.
Lyme disease, right? Like, there is a habitat issue here, there is a temperature issue here. This is multifactorial, and we need to be doing a better job of taking care of the planet. So when people come in to see me and we're talking about Lyme disease, I'm asking them, like, tell me about your landscape. What are you spraying on it? Right? Because we're all complete paranoid about ticks, and everybody is out there blasting their yards with pesticides that are known neurotoxins.
Right.
Please do me one favor. Stop. That's not the solution. I guarantee it. I know it feels good because we're afraid.
Yeah.
Huge mistake. Right? We're just perpetuating the problem, and that's why we need each other to hold up the lens and be like, okay, we can do better.
Yeah.
Everything needs to be included in the solution, including the earth.
Yeah, it's like, put down, let's let the separation burn down and come to the table with, like, just the knowing it's time to start creating solutions. So thank you so much for
It's my pleasure.
doing. Thank you for, this is much longer than we had talked about, but phenomenally valuable. Thank you. And I look
My pleasure.
creating more together.
Okay.
Okay.
You too. Mwah. Thank you.
Thank you.